Drei oder 3 Monate vergangen sind, wird euer Terror Weltleichtigkeit verwahren.
Welcome, I'm Dr. Rick Waj, and you are watching episode 6 of The World Then and Now with our special guest, Dr. Dina Dye.
Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing good. As we go through these series and these topics, I'm more and more amazed at how prophetic the Bonhoeffer DVD series is.
Yeah. I think I couldn't agree more. I mean, we know history repeats itself. We know that there are causes, things that happen when you do certain things. There's a natural response sort of thing. And so there's part of that there. But again, what we keep emphasizing is how fast we arrive there. And some people don't even know we're there. And so that's one of the points of doing this series, in addition to Bonhoeffer, is to say, yes, folks, we are there, and how are we going to cope? What are we going to do about it?
Well, this episode 6, is worshiping the idol of safety and security.
I know. Does that just not blow your mind? And here we are.
We have so much to say about this. We want to put the clip on
Yeah.
Bonhoeffer episode 6, and then we're going to talk about it, so don't go away.
Bonhoeffer said that there's no way to peace along the way to safety. And we've come to a place in our country now where we exalt safety as if it's a god, that we have all these situations where nobody can be hurt. We are a risk-adverse nation. We are a risk-adverse culture. And so because of that, we exalt the idea of safety over the idea of peace and order. Peace means giving oneself completely to God's commandments, wanting no security. That's what Bonhoeffer said. When we demand security, we basically bypass the concept of peace and order. And so we have created safety nets in every facet of our society. And safety nets, we've tried to equalize everything, and this is impossible. You cannot equalize every single element in society. That's communism. Making everything equal. And this is communism, when we try to stretch it out so that everyone feels safe and everyone is covered no matter what the circumstances are. Life is a life of risk, and if we don't take risks, sometimes we never reap the benefits of what could happen in our own life. The demand for security and safety leads us farther and farther away from actual peace. Bonhoeffer said that there were those who believed that they could face the power of evil with the sheer purity of their own will and their own principles. And he said in that environment that men of conscience became completely overwhelmed because they couldn't face it with their own will. And in doing so, they deceived their conscience in order not to despair. And so there's something that happens. We shut down in order not to despair with what's going on around us, when we become overwhelmed, and that's a natural response. Some people might retreat into their own private virtuousness, that they would close their eyes and ears to the injustice all around them. That's a way they cope. That's a coping mechanism for them in the culture in which we live. And he said at that time with the Lutheran Church that it had declared itself to be too virtuous to even enter into the political arena. And sometimes the church today considers itself to be too spiritual, too virtuous, to be able to enter into an arena that is hardly virtuous and hardly spiritual. But folks, that's our responsibility, is to enter into that public sphere and defend those who cannot defend themselves, defend the innocent, those with no voice. That is our responsibility. even things, as I mentioned earlier, that don't affect us, we have a responsibility to help those in the culture and help those who are innocent and cannot speak up for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're there. I mean, we worship at the altar of safety. I mean, we do everything in our lives to make sure that no risk is coming in anywhere. Well, you cannot build a culture, a nation, a society when you take away every potential chance. Risk helps you grow. I mean, you think of great entrepreneurs who build these amazing businesses and companies. The only way you can do it is by taking risk. And so we basically prevented ourselves from having to deal with anything unpleasant, uncomfortable, that's going to shake up our world. I mentioned in the clip, we have insurance for absolutely every inevitability in life. And by doing this, by creating an environment which is supposedly totally safe and secure, there's no room for God. What is it? How is he going to step in your life and meet your need if you've done everything in your power to make sure he can't step in and meet your need?
Yeah. Who is your God? Mutual of Omaha.
There you go.
How many of the prophets used the phrase or something like this, safety and security, and then the end came in like a flood?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I imagine during, the Roman world, it was probably similar. I mean, that was a very thriving, prosperous empire. And they probably did quite a bit to protect themselves, especially the wealthy, and the wealthy, they build their walls around their homes. They have their armed security that they pay for, all of those things to protect their lives and prevent anything unpleasant from coming in.
I remember years ago I took a missionary trip to Honduras, and we did some exploring on our own time into caves. And we had a guide, Honduran guide, take us through some of the caves. And I realized there were no safety cables, there were no ladders, there were no helmets, there were no lights, and you were just pretty much on your own. And I realized what a difference this buffer we have in America over anything that might possibly hurt us.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, there's no room for God when you do that. I think back. So in my own life, I had some adventures that I think maybe helped a little bit. I mean, obviously no one wants to go out and risk their life. I mean, that's not your first, that's not the first thing you want to do. But I traveled a lot in Europe during the 70s, which was a very volatile time then. And there were several instances. I mean, I was in Athens when the tanks rolled in and there was a military coup. I was in Spain when there was a coup there. I was on the island of Crete when a war broke out between Turkey and Greece. I mean, I have just got stories all over the place. I was in the Guatemalan earthquake in 1974. And, I mean, obviously there was fear. And maybe I was too dumb as a, young hippie to even know that I was in danger. But I think it did help give me a little bit of, hopefully I'm not just so terrified of any, but what's the bottom line? We're afraid to lose our wealth and we're afraid to lose our life. And so, but those are the very things that God says, he will provide and preserve, if we make a covenant with him. But in a nation that has broken covenant with God, then they have to build their own walls and protect themselves because they don't trust that he'll do it.
In one of the epistles, Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, writes to this congregation, and he says that they have paved the way for the gospel. But it's a technical term that he uses in warfare, that is used in warfare for the woodcutters who would cut down the trees to make room.
Oh, wow.
For the army to be able to go through and pierce through the enemy.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And so when you think about that, that means that the ordinary people who were not in the army were the first ones taking the risk.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what do they say? 15% of the colonists were the ones who won the war against the greatest army, empire, military on planet Earth, But again, when I mentioned in our last show, it was George Whitefield and his preaching of the gospel that paved the way and built up the courage in the hearts and minds of the people to be able to go out and do that. I mean, we are desperate, I think, for a third Great Awakening. If we have any hope to push, because you cannot face this evil on your own. Like, there's nothing you can do. This evil is so insidious. It has seeped into everything. It is all around. There is literally, what are you going to do to stop evil? Well, you can't. So this is where that covenant relationship with God comes in. You can't do it on your own.
No, you can't. And we have to recognize, in my opinion, that it doesn't rely upon someone else. It relies upon us. The future of America, the future of our freedoms of faith in our country rely upon what we will do next. It's very easy to rely on a pastor. It's very easy to rely on a congressman. It's very easy to rely on your mayor, your governor, and even our president. It's very easy to rely on other people. We can't do that. We must rely upon God and take the responsibility ourselves.
Yeah, it's it's your responsibility. Yes. So one of the things I say to people, you need, in this environment, of all these insane public health orders and these governors that have taken authoritarian control and just shoved it down our throats, literally, you have to strive to create normal in your own life. And, however that looks for you, you need to step out and make normal around you. And that might be an uncomfortable place. That might mean, I ain't wearing a mask going into the store. And if they tell you to leave, well, you have a choice. You can leave, or you can, obviously that's a small thing, but everyone has to make that choice in that regard. And so however you can strive to keep normal in your family, especially for the health of your kids and your grandkids. Like, this is just insane, and it's by design, on purpose, to divide a country, to separate people from one another, to keep people out of church, where when you come together in unity and there's power to push, but they're doing this by design, and we are dutifully following like sheep. We're following the wrong shepherd here. And I just really want to encourage people in that way.
And I think it's important whether you're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or you're wearing it in some stores but not every store, or you're wearing it when there's a large crowd in a store. Whatever you're doing, whatever you've decided to do, and whatever the authorities around you are recommending that you do, sometimes even demanding that you do, I think it's important that you don't do it out of fear.
Yes.
You make the decision because you believe that is right for you.
Exactly.
And right for the people around you, not out of fear.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. And, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. In Europe, they're already putting together something called COVID passports. So you won't be able to travel without this, your COVID passport to be able to go and do certain things. We talked about with the vaccinations. Our governor has already issued her decree that once there's a vaccine, healthcare workers will be required, nursing home residents, education, probably teachers, first responders, police. It will be mandatory for them to get the vaccine, and it'll be probably impossible for you to get employment in certain places, to enroll in certain places if you don't have it. So, it's coming. That is coming. And so we have to prepare for that. You've got to figure out what you're going to do here. But, you do have power with where you spend your money. And, I know people are so frustrated with sports, the NFL and, the NBA and all of these things, because they have caved into the culture and the BLM, line. So you have a responsibility with your money. What are you going to do with it? How, do you want to support this nonsense? All these things, you still have some measure of control here, and you need to exercise it.
It's really interesting you bring up sports, because I'm not a sports guy. I'm interested in too many other things to deal with that. But I think it's funny because I did a research paper years and years ago on demonic possession within the religious community. And the only time within 300 years of early church writings do you find demonic possession within the religious community is at the Colosseum. So,
Interesting.
so I think it's very interesting
Yeah.
that we're talking about sports because a lot of people are bummed about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think that there's a lot bigger priorities right now than sports.
Yeah.
And, when we talk about the vaccines, and I have I'm very opinionated on what somebody else sticks into my body.
Mm-hmm.
I think at a minimum, should you decide you're okay to be vaccinated, that we ask the questions. Like, for example, what's in the vaccine? I want to hear about the ingredients that you're thinking about placing in my body. Number two, has it been tested long enough to know what the effects could be upon me?
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And not only that, my opinion is you have the right to refuse anything that you're uncomfortable with being placed within your own body.
Well, I know. And the whole mantra of the left is my body, my choice. But that only works with abortion. It doesn't work with vaccination. It's this constant hypocrisy of this. I was listening to a guy the other day on War Room. He was talking about the vaccines. Right now, they say there's approximately 12 different sort of variations of this virus, and the vaccines will only cover 5. So you still got 7 that they're not going to cover. And even if 60% of the people got a vaccine, and even if it was 100% functional, you're still only maybe got end up with 15 or 20% of the population actually even covered with it. So there's still no vaccine for SARS-1. There's still no vaccine for HIV. The odds on there ever being one are pretty remote. And this is a perfect example of where people, this is, you make your choice. Now, if a lot of people have been vaccinated, then the rest of the people are mostly fine, because the ones that are vaccinated are basically protecting the ones that aren't. But people, there was always a religious exemption in virtually every state about that. And they're removing, like in California, and they're removing those exemptions. And like I said, our own governor is now, she's threatening, this will be mandatory. She's got a thing with her public health order that she can basically lock you up in your home if you don't follow quarantine instructions, according to her. This is all insidious. And again, the state is acting as if it's our nanny that's going to take care of us and protect us from anything from happening. And yet the state is the worst most inefficient entity at actually protecting anyone. You think of our vets in the veterans hospitals, and the quality of care under the government just terrible. So it's really all just madness.
And they really let it go until President Trump.
Exactly, his executive. Exactly. And you can go now. Vets are able to go outside the system and get health care privately if wherever they want. But up until then, nobody. The government does not do anything well. It's not an efficient system. It doesn't produce fruit. The government it's there to protect and preserve the nation. Anything, it doesn't make anything better. It's just a non-functioning. Try calling, MVD or something. Like nothing works. And so now we're going to have the government running our health care, right? The goal in all of this is single payer health care. The radical Dems are trying to get to that place, and they are using this COVID emergency to get there. So that's the next shoe to drop. Get ready, folks.
And I know that we've said this before, but I think it's important to say it again, and that is that those that are in a political position you have voted in or allowed to be voted in. So if they disagree with what your religious beliefs are and your stance personally of your own safety and what you believe you want this nation to become, vote them out.
Amen.
Vote somebody else in that has good morals, good ethics on how things should be civilly.
Yeah. So, do we need to show the second?
I think we should.
Yeah, because it's a bit long, so it doesn't give us much time. But I think it kind of encapsulates
We'll
everything.
Come back real quick
Yeah.
right after this. Go ahead and take a look.
Yeah.
Bonhoeffer said that in a world where success is the measure and justification for all things, the figure of him, Yeshua the Messiah, who was sentenced and crucified, remains a stranger. Profound words. God is interested in our obedience, not in our success. And as I mentioned earlier, the church has become a business. And your success is determined not on the level of commitment of your parishioners, but on how much comes in every Sabbath and how successful you are in the eyes of the community. But everything about the kingdom of heaven is exactly opposite of the world. And so how are we operating? Are we operating under the kingdom principles, or are we operating under the principles of what govern the world? And everything is 180 degrees opposite. Bonhoeffer said that no one has yet believed in God and the kingdom of God. No one has yet heard about the realm of the resurrected and not been homesick from that hour, waiting and looking forward joyfully to being released from bodily existence. I think we could all say amen on that. And sometimes we just want to escape, don't we? But the reality is, God has given us the number of years He has given us, and we need to make it count. We need to leave a legacy behind for our children and our grandchildren, that we walked with God and we made a difference wherever He placed us. That is our mission. Bonhoeffer also said that as he wrestled and he was in prison, that death to him is grace, that the greatest gift of grace that God gives to His people who believe in Him becomes the gateway to our homeland, the tabernacle of joy, he called it, the everlasting kingdom of peace. Now, I do believe there is a measure of the kingdom of heaven on earth, and the kingdom of heaven on earth functions within His people. We are the ones who extend and expand that kingdom to the four corners. We are the ones who represent what good is in the world. And if we are not operating according to that, if the fruit of the Spirit is not operating in us and making a difference in our communities, then God doesn't appear that He's even bothered with us. Bonhoeffer said that to do the will of God, to do it radically, courageously, and joyfully. This is our hope. This is what we desire. This is how we plan to make a difference. We know that God, in His mercy, will lead us through difficult times, but ultimately we want Him to lead us to Himself. The solution to all of this, according to Bonhoeffer, was to do the will of God. And to find the will of God meant getting in His throne room, approaching Him in the manner that He has prescribed, and studying His scriptures, and knowing that you know that you know. Bonhoeffer added that the blood of martyrs might well again be demanded, but this blood, if we really have the courage and loyalty to shed it, will not be innocent, shining like that of the first witnesses for the faith. And folks, that may be what it takes, the shedding of blood. Think of those that have gone before us, those that fought for the nation, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the World War I and II, those that have given their lives for liberty in this country, which now we just completely dismiss. Those who have shed their blood so that we can be free. And what have we done with it? Bonhoeffer understood all this.
I talked about the church having become big business. It's just a big corporate business. And I think it just looks like all other businesses.
I have every right to speak on this issue as you do. I was a pastor for over 20 years. I'm in one of the largest denominations. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
And it can become a business, and often now with this whole mall mentality that, it's a one-stop shop for all of your needs.
Right.
We will provide your needs for you.
Right.
You just sit and listen.
Just like the government.
Just like the government. That is a potential for a disaster.
Yeah.
To remove the courage of the personal responsibility to be able to stand up as a believer and make change.
Yeah.
And no, because the church is going to do it. No, because that ministry is going to. No, because the pastor is going to do it. And it's not up to the pastor. It's up to you. It's not up to the church. It's up to you. You're a part of the church, but it's not up to someone else. It's up to you.
Yeah. And, you know, you're not called to do the will of the pastor. You're
Right.
called to do the will of God.
That's right.
Find the will of God and do the will of God, and your life will, you know, this, it's not, there are no guarantees. I think we all know we are going to die. So we have the number of days I mentioned to make them count. Do the will of God in those days, and he will prosper and bless and build a lasting legacy, an eternal legacy. That's what we want to leave.
We do, so that our footprints really have made a change. That what we've done in life has made things better. What do we say as Christians? We say, have you been saved? But as a Jew, you say, have you redeemed the world?
Yes.
You know, have you done something to buy it back, to make it better?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's what we're called to do. So really the goal here, you know, it's not about safety and security. It's about making a difference, and it's about serving out in the community, in your community in which you're in. I mean, if everybody just did their part in their community, this thing would, you know, this would just go right across the nation. And we are a nation that affects all other nations as well. It's not just about America. It's about America's influence abroad as well. And
And
it
I was
matters.
Our influence has not been very good.
No,
They're watching our political system, saying we're crazy. And it's-
well, the Chinese are exploiting our weakness right now. I mean, they're moving in for the kill. You know, I'm not going to get into how the whole thing started because I don't know, and I'm not sure we'll ever know. But they are using this against us, and you know, pray for your leaders, and you know, pray for our House and Senate and for our president in this, that they have wisdom dealing, because the power of the Chinese, the Communist Party, they're prepared to take down the whole world. So that's it's a whole other topic, and we probably won't have time in this series. But
So not everybody thinks the same way as you, and not everybody has the same moral compass as you do as well. I was in a large Home Depot type of store the other day with my wife, and we were walking through, and they had a big display of masks. And my wife, being an RN,
yeah,
flipped over, you know, where did this mask come from? And the whole rack came from China. And I thought, how funny is that?
yeah, your mask. Now, my mask I bought comes from America, and I have my Trump 2020 mask. And I'm just going to encourage you, this election, vote Trump 2020.
Yeah, and I would also agree with you that, you know, whatever Israel TV network believes on their own, that's a different
Yeah.
subject. But I personally believe that the only way to have any hope for the next 4 years
Yeah.
is to vote Republican.
Yeah.
That's the only way I
Yeah.
see, and that's my opinion. But I can have my own opinion.
You may, and me too. I mean, this thing isn't ever going away. The war is real. It's ongoing forever. And so, you know, presidents will come and go. But hopefully this is a time now where we see what's going on and who the evil is and who the players are, and that we rise up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's such a distinct difference between the two parties
Absolutely.
as we film this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've dealt with some real issues, but there's more to come. So we will see you next time.